You're listening to the 95Podcast from the team at 95 Network, where we host conversations specifically designed to support leaders in small and mid-sized churches. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 95 Podcast. I'm Carolee Culpepper, and I am here with our Executive Director, Dale Sellers. How's it going, Dale?
I'm just doing so good. It's just an exciting time in life right now. God's doing some great things, and the 95 Network team just keeps growing. We're recording this podcast in February of 2022, and a year ago today, there were 2 people on our team, me and Stephanie, and today there's 16. And we just every Monday morning, people may not know this, but every Monday morning we pray. Our team meets at 9:00, and anyone that can join us joins in on the Zoom call and prays. And boy, the prayer time this morning was just so powerful. And some of the new people on the team were on the prayer call. And I'm just amazed at the people that God keeps bringing to 95 Network. I mean, just I tell them all that, you know, they're high quality because they had the dirt beat out of them in ministry, and they still sticking with it. So, and so
it's a real deal.
I'm very encouraged because, and I know this too, you know, there's a biblical principle: if you create a vessel, God will fill it. And because we've built this team, and we're very broad in our arena, we have a lot of people in place, so we can do a lot of ministry, a lot of coaches, a lot of facilitators. We've created room
throughout the nation. Everybody's kind of spread out.
We've created a vessel for God to fill. So I'm excited about that, because pastors are hurting, ministry leaders are hurting. In fact, that's the reason we have our guest on today. Is just to kind of dive in a little bit more about dealing with your hurts and kind of things like that. And so I want to take a moment to introduce Tim Pender today to us. He's a pastor here in Simpsonville that I met at. We actually both spoke at a conference together last year. And I was so impressed with him that I did the important thing that all good Christian pastors do. I got with him, and we met at Cracker Barrel and had lunch. And so the anointing was flowing, and so
can't go wrong at Cracker Barrel.
And I asked him that day, we're talking, hanging out. I said, you know, knowing your story now, I'd love for you to come on the podcast and talk about it. So, Pastor Tim, welcome today.
Hello, man. Thank you so, man. I'm so excited to be here with you all. This is just awesome.
We're glad to have you here today. You pastor a church in over in Simpsonville, South Carolina, in the real part of that part of Simpsonville. People who listen to the podcast won't know what that means, but you're in the real part of Simpsonville. I live in the other part. So
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Well, what I want to do today is, you and I, as I said, we got together and had lunch a few weeks ago, and during that lunch, I just wanted to hang out with you, but I didn't know your full story. I knew that when you spoke at the conference that we did together, you talked a little bit about the military and stuff. But as we were talking, you made a statement about, I think you said senior psychiatrist once a week or something like that. How did what did you say there?
Well, I was just talking about once I had got out of the military, once I retired, I did 29 years in the Army, the best branch of all the branches.
The Army, yes.
Yes, sir. I just had to make sure everybody understands that first.
Yeah, I'm not going to fight you on it.
Yes, sir.
Me neither.
Yes, well, you guys are going to get the comments from folks that are going to argue with you, so I don't have to worry about that. But anyway, so once I got out, I realized that the techniques that I was using to maintain my stressors were not working as well as I thought they would. So I went to the VA. I talked to my doctor. My doctor said, "Hey, why don't I make a referral for you to go to a psychiatrist?" I went to see a psychiatrist. As I was talking to the psychiatrist, she was like, "We need to put you on some meds because you have PTSD." And I said, "As long as you don't give me nothing that's gonna make me loopy, because I'm not a happy person." I said, "Don't give me nothing, no craziness." And she's laughing and everything. But anyway. So that's when I really found out that I was diagnosed with PTSD.
Did you have any idea before that was might be a problem?
You don't really take time to really notice it, because you got folks you're taking care of, you got things you're focusing on.
Yeah.
We in the military at the time, we were starting a thing called resiliency training, which teaches you how, basic stressors of life, how to use various techniques in order to, overcome those various stressors. But sometimes those things can be pretty overwhelming.
Well, this has been a good intro to get people kind of curious and pull up a chair, because that's what happened to me. Well, you made that statement and we were having lunch. And so before we kind of dive into some of the issues that you've been working through, tell us your story. Tell us, who you are, how you grew up, where you live, that kind of thing. Let us get to know a little bit about Tim Pender.
Okay. I was born in the great state of Ohio.
Okay.
Did all my high school and everything there. Decided to join the Army because my wife and I had our son when we were juniors in high school.
Wow.
So I was on my plan was to go to University of Tennessee. I was going to run track and maybe try out for football. And but then when we had the baby,
that's the wrong orange, by the way.
Say again.
That's the wrong orange. I just want to make sure.
Say it one more time.
It's the wrong color orange.
No, it's the right color.
I'm with Dale on this one. Gotta
anyway, I'm sorry.
Clemson.
I didn't mean to disrupt you there.
Hey, for those of y'all that's just listening on this podcast, we live almost in the heart of Clemson area. So yeah, that's why you're saying that's the wrong point.
Carol Lee went there. So
yeah.
Well, everybody makes mistakes in their lives, but and you know what? And that's why we have redemption.
The Lord is gracious, right?
Yes, he is.
So anyway, you wanted to go run track, okay?
But I took on the responsibility of taking care of my family. So I joined the military, joined the Army. While I was in basic training, I wrote a letter to my wife and told her that we're getting married. She said that was my proposal, was that letter, that we're getting married. I didn't ask her. I just said, this is what's going to happen. So we got married. So I was an infantryman for 17 years. I ended up hurting my knee, having to have 2 knee surgeries. And so then I reclassified to HR. And so I did my last 12 years as a HR supervisor manager. During that time, I've gone through a lot of ups, a lot of downs. But I think that was what made me who I am today. It put me through the crucible of life, and very happily still married to the same woman. And have two.
How long you been married?
What year is this? 2022. So it'll be 38 years this year.
Congratulations.
Wow.
38 years this year.
Yeah, congratulations.
So we're very, very excited, and she actually helped me set up for the podcast. She's making sure, that's why you see the 2 pictures and all that other.
It looks great, man. You're looking good back there,
dude.
Yeah.
I'm old. I tell folks all the time I'm an old infantry guy. So you know what? You might have seen half a tree, or maybe seen, some underwear on the wall or something. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't be caring, but that's why she's in my life, because she keeps me straight.
That's right. That's right.
So how long did you stay in the military?
We did 29 years.
Wow.
In the military.
Now, did y'all have other kids during that time?
I have my son, and then I have a daughter.
Okay. And you were probably gone a lot, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. When I was an infantryman at that time, I probably averaged 2 weeks, maybe, 2 weeks a month. I was probably gone doing some type of training. And, I loved it then. But then I saw some opportunities that I missed out on. A lot of growing up. I laugh. I tell folks I don't know how to potty train because I wasn't there for potty training. My wife Yolanda had to do all that kind of stuff, and so the good and the bad of it. I'm not.
Yeah.
So tell us what was your military experience like?
Oh, it was awesome. My experience, I got to meet a lot of young people. I was a drill sergeant for 3 years. I did drill sergeant duty for 3 years. I loved that. I would never do it again, but I loved it while I was doing it. So I got a chance to influence a lot of people. In fact, I had I think he's like my first or second cycle that I was a drill sergeant, friended me on Facebook. And I mean, I was just like, whoa, you still remember me? And he's like, yes,
My understanding is nobody forgets their drill sergent because they hate him.
Well, no, I was the nicest drill sergeant ever.
I'm sure you were.
Yes. And I told him that every day.
Now, when did you come to know the Lord?
I don't really want to tell that part of the story, but anyway. So I accepted. I was 7 years old. I read a what do we call this a track? I was reading a track. At the back of that track, it said, "If you want Jesus in your life, read this track. Read this." I read that, and I know that I was saved at that moment.
Oh, that's so cool.
But the one thing that I learned is that if you don't have anybody teaching you or training you,
discipling,
it's very easy to fall. And that's why we ended up having a baby when we were juniors in high school.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have anybody to really come alongside me and teach me. And so I had been in the Army probably about 2 years at that time. And I actually got into a Bible argument with a guy. And I was beating him like he stole something. And I was just just really eating him up. And I was walking back toward my car, and God spoke to me and he said, it's awful funny that you know all that Bible and you ain't living none of it.
Oh, man.
And so I just started crying. I was sitting in my car, I was crying, and I said, Lord, I need to get myself back right. And so that's kind of started my journey. So I was probably about 20 when I really started seeking the Lord, and really, so from then on, I just started being involved in ministries and helping out wherever we were stationed at the time, and doing whatever God had called me to do to live my life for His glory. So
that's so cool.
So do you think that was pivotal in your Army career and how you everything eventually played out for you?
Oh yeah. Oh, come on now, it had to be,
Or how was that pivotal? I guess I should say.
How was it pivotal? It kept some people safe. I'm telling you, because I've always known I've had a temper. I get angry very quickly, and a lot of people, if it wouldn't have been for Jesus, I don't think I would be here, because I'd have been in jail, because I would have hurt them seriously. But because of His grace and mercy, and yes, it was extended to some people.
Good.
Yeah. So it was pivotal in that. I think the hardest thing for me, I'm highly competitive. I was very successful in the military. In fact, I made a very high rank in less than 10 years. And so we have what we call E ranks because on the enlisted side. So I went from E1 to E7 in 9 years. And a lot of times it takes people 15 to 16 years to do that.
Wow.
And so I was really dedicated to that. I was, and I put in the work, but God opened up the doors for me to achieve it.
That's so cool.
And so,
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So did you, were you in combat?
I was, okay, let me rephrase this. So I deployed, the first time we deployed to Kuwait, I was HR when we deployed.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to kick in any doors.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was my wife's prayer, because she really didn't enjoy me being an infantryman.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started the war, not the war on drugs, Operation Iraqi Freedom and all those, I was HR at the time. So I was HR. So when you say in combat, most folks are thinking that you're closing in on someone, shooting them. Once you arrived in Iraq, you was in combat.
Yes, yeah, because you're on edge 24 hours, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, well, 26 hours. Yeah. Yes. Yes. In fact, the alarm clock, the default alarm clock on the Apple phone has the same alarm that we use for when we had rockets and stuff coming into our camp.
Oh my goodness.
And so it is one of my stories is I was at home sleep. I think we had been out of country probably about maybe 6 weeks or so. Mm-hmm. And my alarm on my Apple phone went off, and that was the alarm. And I was underneath my bed. You just don't think. The alarm goes off. I kind of get my senses to myself, and I'm underneath my bed. And then so now I'm what we call reframing. I'm like, okay, where am I? Mm-hmm. You know, I'm kind of walking myself through this, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm at home, and now I can make fun. You know, at the time I'm all stressed out, but now I can kind of make fun of it. But yes, so I don't like that default alarm.
Yeah,
I'd use a different one if I were you.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that thing went off, and I was just like, oh man, and then so those are the kind of things that you just learn how to deal with in your life.
How are you dealing with it? I mean, because when we talked, you said you had dealt with pretty well severe PTSD, and you still deal with it, as what I understand.
Yeah. When God designed us, I have to remind folks this. He designed us with an imagination, and because He designed us with an imagination, you never forget anything that comes into your presence via your senses. Mm-hmm. You never forget. Mm-hmm. What we do is we try to put something in the place of whatever that memory is, so that it does not have the same level of strength that it had initially. So what we had to learn is, you heard me earlier say, reframe something, where yes. You're in the midst of a situation and you just kind of step back and say, am I really in this situation, or is my mind referring back to something that has happened before? Mm. And so those are the kind of things that you have to constantly do in order to make sure that you stay aware, cognizant of what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. So back to the story that you started all this off before you changed the direction on me. Uh-huh. So I go to another psychiatrist, and he asked me, he said, you're retired? I said, kind of, sort of. He says, well, what kind of, sort of? I said, yes. We launched a church in Simpsonville, and he was like, wait a minute. You're in here to see me for PTSD, and now you're going to pastor a church? And I said, yes, sir. And he just kind of looked at me. He said, okay. He said, so you have PTSD, and now you want to go into one of the most stressful occupations yep. that there is for a person to go into. I said, yes, sir. So that's how our first, with my local psychiatrist, how things started off, because he was just like, I don't understand it, but once we went through a couple sessions, he understood that I'm just leaning on Jesus, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I'm just leaning and just depending that nothing that my mind can conceive or comes to my mind, that He's not able to help me get through it.
When we first started off mic, before we came on, I asked you, was there any triggers? I didn't even know the word triggers till we had Polly Hamp on. So I'm learning so much about PTSD. And then I had an experience this past summer that put me in counseling for a week with her husband. And I learned, I'm still learning about trauma. But mm-hmm. I asked you, I said, is there anything we shouldn't go, any area we shouldn't go, or because it may be a trigger? And you said, well, everything's a trigger. Talk a little bit about what triggers are. What's happening when somebody does something or a scenario happens. What's going on inside of you when you experience something like that?
Okay, so trigger is simply just, as I said before, because your mind never forgets anything. Mm-hmm. So it's all in there. And what your mind does, it does what we call association. So when something happens, it tries to associate something that you've already experienced so that you can understand it. So for instance, I tell people prejudice is not necessarily a bad thing, because your mind does it all the time. It's what you do with the information that could make it a bad thing. So your mind prejudges the situation, mm-hmm. and then it helps you determine what you need to do. So we have these things, for instance, when I jumped on the Zoom today, you weren't on. And so my first inclination was check to make sure. So the trigger was, it's not working right. So let me make sure that I'm doing right. Mm-hmm. And so that's how triggers work. It's just something to get your mind working into something. So what a lot of times when it's in the mental health realm, we use it as what got you into your state of thinking at that moment. And then, is it something negative? Is it something positive? Or is it something neutral? A lot of times we don't think about something being neutral, but it's just which direction you want to go once it presents itself to you.
Wow. And so
is that simple enough?
Yeah. So like if you're in a scenario where you're in a new scenario where it caused you to feel like something that happened 20 years ago, that triggers that old memory. Is that correct?
That is 100%.
So how do they help you with that?
I didn't know we was doing a psychology class today, bro, but okay. So what the first thing that we have to do when we feel triggered, the first thing that we have to do is control our breathing.
Okay.
That is the first thing you have to do. A lot of the guys that I coach, the first thing I teach them is what we call 4-count breathing. Mm-hmm. And it's just breathe in through your mouth for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, let it out through your nose for a count of 4. Mm. And what we're doing is we're regulating your body, because once you get triggered, your body immediately starts going into fight, flight, or freeze mode. Mm-hmm. And so what you want to do is you want to, instead of your body automatically going into these reactions, you want to wait a minute, let me evaluate this before I do this. Mm. And so that's what first thing you got to do is breathe. You got to get some clean air into your system, because what your body does is it builds up tension. So if you need, so that your adrenaline starts building up. So if you need to fight, if you need to run, whatever you need to do, your body's preparing for that, because it's saying, when this happened before, bad things happen. So let's prepare so that, whatever we have to do. So first thing we have to do is breathe. Once we start breathing, we can get clarity of mind. And once we get clarity of mind, then we can evaluate the situation. And I mean, this is happening in seconds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, I'm not, for instance, with me, I'm not on our FOB. I'm not on our forward operating base. Okay, I'm in Simpsonville, South Carolina, and then you had to kind of talk yourself through what that emotion is, those things that are going on in you, so that you can kind of regulate yourself down instead of being hyped. I know you've heard of soldiers coming, or people that have PTSD. They're called hypervigilant. Mm-hmm. Their vigilance is at this high level at all the time, and so what we try to do is bring that down. Mm-hmm. And especially with someone with a quick temper like me, I had to learn that, because something can be wrong and I'm like ready to punch a hole in something or anything like that. So so some of this techniques that I had to learn was because of my anger, but it also goes over into me controlling my stressors also. Mm.
Do you think that, I know being in the military and being a pastor is very different, but do you think that pastors in their line of work, obviously mental health is a huge thing right now, but do you think that they struggle with these kind of things too?
Oh no, because we got the blood of Jesus, man. We ain't got no issues.
Really?
Yeah, I hear that.
you ain't got a lick of, man, come on now. Now, after we get rid of all that rhetoric and all that nonsense, yes, more so, because one of the things that we really have to work through is the fact that in fact, I had to admit it yesterday. My message that I was preaching on yesterday, I was talking about, as I was preparing, I was really convicted because I saw my shortcomings and me not doing the things that I was preaching about. Mm-hmm. And then in the middle of my message, I said, oh, wait a minute. I'm not supposed to say that because I'm the pastor. Mm-hmm. And, everybody laughs, of course. But really, there are some folks that actually believe that the pastor has no faults. Mm-hmm. And so some folks actually fall into that trap that they have to present as if I have no faults. Mm-hmm. And when you present like you have no faults, guess what? That's your biggest fault, because now you have the spirit of pride that has come in. And the Bible tells us that pride cometh before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Mm-hmm. But if you can willingly say, you know what, I am stressed out. Mm-hmm. You people are stressing me out. I need to take a break.
What if a pastor doesn't really think that there's a safe place to say that to anyone?
He has to find one. Mm-hmm. You have to find one. You know, Jesus gave us a technique. He said, ask, seek, or knock. But you got to do something. You just can't be sitting there talking about, Lord, send me somebody. You got to go help find somebody.
That's so good.
Mm-hmm. You got, you know what? I need help. I know I got some issues. Let me see if I can find another pastor. Let me see if somebody that I know that, you know, that probably has a little bit of understanding of what, see, now you done got me on the soapbox. And you know, because I believe pastors should be the most unified group. Mm. Because we're all preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
But I am finding that we are one of the most splintered groups, because we look at the little micro thing and say, I can't agree with you because you say the Lord and I say God. Mm.
Mm-hmm. You keep concentrating on the stuff that doesn't matter. Go on, keep on.
The bottom line is, C.S. Lewis said in his book, Mere Christianity, let's focus on what has brought us together. Let us look at the gospel and the proclamation of the gospel. Now, we can differentiate on how we proclaim the gospel, but let us unify in the fact that we should be proclaiming the gospel. That if you're hurting, if you're going through despair, if you're having pain, Jesus has already opened up the way for you to have relief. Mm-hmm. Then here comes the hard part. Then we have to live what we preach. Mm-hmm. If I tell the church that we need to be unified, then I need to be unifying with other pastors. Yep. Mm-hmm. Because we're stronger together.
That's right.
God says that I commend my blessings where there is unity. Mm-hmm. And so if all these things are true, which they are, then I'm actually setting myself up for failure because I'm contradicting what the word of God says. Mm. So if I'm the pastor, I should not be isolated. I should find somebody. I should have a team that is outside of my congregation that I could go to, and I can be me if I feel like I have to be this certain way around my church members. I should have these people that I can sit down with. And if I say, you know what, my members are a bunch of knuckleheads and I ain't worried about it getting back to them, I just need to vent to somebody. But if I keep all that in, it's like a pressure kettle. Mm. I don't know if y'all like tea. I like tea. You know, you got your little kettle on there, and once it gets enough pressure, it has to release, and it has the steam, and they put a whistle on there so you know it's reached steam. Now think about if it didn't have that release. It would just build up, and next thing you know, it would blow up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why we are having all these pastors that are committing suicide. That's why we have all these pastors that are doing things to disqualify themselves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're relieving the pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They really don't want to say I need help, but they put themselves in a position where they can say, I am now disqualified because I committed this transgression.
Wow.
Mm. And so now, Lord, the church made me leave. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
But yes, it is your fault, because if you would have gotten around some other pastors, or if you've had some pastors that maybe are retired or something like that, that you can go to and say, hey, do you mind if I can maybe take you to dinner, take you to lunch, and just talk to you for a minute, and you just dump on them and just say, this is what's going on, and they can say, you know what, son, you know what, daughter, check this out. I went through that.
You actually have a group of pastors you meet with every month, don't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, how that works for you and for them.
It's called the Pastors Advisory Council. We get together monthly, pastors from different churches, different denominations, and we just get in there and we just be ourselves. And we just talk about what's going on. And I mean, it's so significant to me because when I came to Simpsonville, South Carolina, the greatest part of South Carolina, I will have y'all know, one of my goals was to start something like that. But see, I'm this kind of person. I don't believe in building tires. I believe in putting something on the tire to make it look pretty, but I ain't building no brand new tire. I'd rather find something that's going on and then assist and use my gifts, my talents, my treasure to assist what's already going on. Because I don't need the spotlight on me. I just need us to get something wrong because I know there's some people that are hurting.
How did you find that group?
That was going to be my question too. Yeah. How do you find something like that?
How did you find something like
that? I found, so when I got to Simpsonville, I don't know anybody in Simpsonville. I came here, I just said, I'm coming here to start a church. This is where I believe that God sent me. In fact, my mentor said, did God tell you to go to Simpsonville? And I said, no, sir. God did not tell me not to go to Simpsonville. So I believe that's where, where we're going to launch. And so we came here and we launched. Well, anyway, I got here and I was having a Bible study in Greenville. I met a young man. He came to my church. He said, hey, you should meet my pastor. And I said, okay, sure. So he told me his pastor, they were meeting in the Simpsonville Theater at the time, Renovation Church here in Simpsonville. So I go to their service. I meet Jeremy. Jeremy and I became buds, very good friends. And Jeremy had been going to PAC for a while. He didn't even tell me about it.
Come on, Jeremy. What's up with that?
And what happened was we had a meeting of a group of he was having what they call the church exchange, where churches got together and just, shared resources and, ideas and things like that. Well, there I met David Ward. David Ward is the facilitator of PAC. And he said, hey, Timothy, are you interested in meeting with a group of pastors? I said, you know what? Yeah, I have a vision for that. So that's how I became a part. It wasn't my best friend. He would try to keep me all to himself. But
let's make sure he doesn't hear this podcast. You called him.
We're going to send it to him.
I tell this all the time. He was like, I never told you. I was like, Jeremy, don't even try it.
So I want to ask you this question. How do you think, we already know pastoring is stressful and stuff. What have you seen, or how do you think the going through the pandemic for the last 2 years has affected our leaders and our pastors?
I believe it affected us depending on your personality type.
Oh, dive in.
So if you are what we call the optimist, you saw it as an opportunity for it to cause hope in your people. All those things that I'm not an optimist, so I can't say everything they thought because I'm not the optimist. I am the pessimist. All right. The optimist says, you say it's a glass half full or half empty. They say the glass is full because it's got half water and half air. That's how optimists think. So this is what God told me. He said, son, this is now the time whereby you will see if the people learned what you were teaching them. Because what I teach is you don't depend on me. I am the conduit that gets you to lock into who God is. God is your source. I am not your source. And so I looked at it, and I actually sent a voicemail to our people, and I said, listen, I am so excited for you right now. because now you're not looking for me. You should be looking to Jesus right now, because we're not meeting. You should be looking to Jesus. All the things that we have taught and learned. But see, some folks, because their definition of who they are is based upon their pastorship,
wow,
they want to have the folks show up so that they can feel good about themselves, because that's the only outlet that they have. And they feeling like, if I don't have the people meet, then they don't need me. And if they don't need me, then I'm nothing. Mm. And so what I encourage the gentleman that I spoke with is, you need to find another outlet. Yeah. You need to find something else, because if somebody asks you, what do you do? It shouldn't just be, I'm a pastor. You're a father, you're a man. But if you focus on one thing and then that one thing's removed, then you feel like you've lost your worth. Mm. And that's why, if you don't mind me jumping into this statistic, the highest rate of suicide are men of retirement age. Mm. Because they feel like they've lost their purpose.
Their identity, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, retirement's not even a biblical concept anyway, but we're not going to get into that right now.
I'm not messing with you right now with that deal.
So some pastors listening right now, and they feel completely lost because their church has not come back. They're a third of what they had before. Their key volunteers have not come back, which is what we're hearing across the country. You're sitting down talking with that pastor. What would you tell her? What would you say to them right now?
The first thing I would tell them is, I have something that I learned, and it's called SUD, S-U-D. Okay. SUD stands for start where you are, use what you got, and do what you can.
I like that.
So what do you have? Mm-hmm. I have these 50 people, but I had 150. I ain't asked you what you had. Mm-hmm. I'm asking you what you got. Mm-hmm. So start with what you have. Use what you got. How can I use these 50 people? Mm-hmm. And do what you can. What can you do with those 50 people? Mm-hmm. The enemy tries to tie us up with the past, because you can't go forward if you're staying in the past. Mm-hmm. So let's look to the future. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite scriptures, see, you got me preaching now. One of my favorite preachers is Hebrews 12:1. And right before that, Hebrews 11, we talk about all these heroes of faith. Mm-hmm. And then it says, all these heroes of faith are watching us, cheering for us. Mm-hmm. And then it goes in and says, and we look into Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross and the shame. So Jesus didn't focus on the cross and the shame. He focused on the joy of being back reunited with the Father. So what the enemy tries to make us do is focus on the past, focus on what's right here in front of us. But Jesus always focused on the will of the Father. The will of the Father was for reconciliation of all men. Mm-hmm. So let's not focus on, I had 150, now I got 25. Let's focus on the joy of, I'm going to teach these 25 how to be the best Christians that they can be. And I'm not worried about it, because this is God's house anyhow. Oh, that's the name of my church, but this is God's plan anyhow. And we want to change one person. If I can change one person's life, I can influence thousands. Mm-hmm. And so it's all about our perspective. Yeah. And I was just, see, I told y'all got me going. And so what we miss is the fact that this is a process of stewardship. Stewardship means the management of the resources that God has given us. It ain't yours. It's God's. Mm-hmm. And you are given the responsibility of these resources of God. What are you doing with the resources? Are you Are you being selfish like the guy that only had one talent, and you're holding it and you're burying it and you're making it all yours because you know God is this, that, and the other? Or are you going out and trying to make more out of what God's given you?
Mm-hmm. That got me a little emotional thinking about the joy set before him, how Jesus is just looking into the future.
Exactly.
I love that.
You know what he saw in the future, don't you?
What did he say?
He saw us.
Exactly.
When he looked at the cross and he sat there and he thought about, hey, if there's another way, because he said it, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. But nevertheless, not my will, but yours. But the joy that sat before him was us. It was you helping you live life as you work through even PTSD and as you pastor your church and for what I've done and what I experienced and where Carol Lee is. And we were the joy that was set before him. It was the people that were going to come to God because he paid the way.
Exactly.
So when you, we're kind of moving toward the end of the podcast today, when you think about your life and what you've experienced and what you're aware of, how do you feel like you're doing today?
How would I think I'm doing better than yesterday and not as good as I'll be doing tomorrow.
That's a great answer.
I like that.
Because I could look at some things that I had on my to-do list that I didn't accomplish, and I could be down about that. But you know what? When my alarm clock went off this morning, I was able to recognize it. I was able to get up. I was able to do my devotional. I was excited that I was getting ready to meet your listeners today. Or I could have said, man. And I think it's all about the perspective.
That's right. Yeah.
I believe it was Nehemiah said that the joy of the Lord is our strength. And I believe that word strength means empowerment, ability. And so if I have joy or excitement about something, that it gives me empowerment and it gives me strength. And so I just rest, like I said, Hebrews 12:1, Jesus had to lean on the joy because I don't think getting crucified is a very happy thing. I don't think having your beard pulled out of your face or getting punched upside the head as hard as, or being scourged, I don't think none of that was a happy thing. But his perspective of it was, I'm going through this because I know the end result is going to be joyous.
That is so powerful. I think I'm going to remember that forever. As we close up today, we always like to ask our guest, what's one word of hope or encouragement that you could give to any pastor that's listening to this podcast today? I know it's hard to pick one.
My word of encouragement for myself is peace. Whenever I go through, Isaiah 26:3 always comes to my mind. I made that a part of my emergency verses, if you want to say that, because if I keep my mind on him, he's going to keep me in perfect peace. Perfect doesn't mean peace without issue or anything like that. It means a mature peace. It means a peace that passes all ability for me to comprehend. I know everybody else is bouncing off the walls, but I'm feeling okay and that everything's going to work out all right. And so I would say, find peace. And one of the ways to find peace is by fellowshipping with like-minded people. Find you a pastor that you can sit down and have lunch with and talk real with. And if you need help, I'm going to put in a shameless plug. If you need help, you can contact 95 Network and they will assist you with helping you to get those things in place for your people. But the first thing, if I may, I got one more analogy. When you get on an aircraft and you're getting ready to fly, the stewardess give you your instructions. One of the instructions they give you, they say something to the effect, if we happen to lose cabin pressure, you will have a apparatus fall from the top of your little thingamadoodle, and you are to grab that and place it on your, and they take you through all the thing. The one thing that I emphasize, just like them, is before you try to help anybody else, put your mask on first. Because what they don't want to tell you is if that cabin depressurizes, you have maybe 3 seconds to put that mask on. And if you pass out trying to put your child's mask on, both of you all are going to die. However, if you put your mask on first and your child passes out, then you can help your child to put theirs on and they can get oxygen. So the same thing I tell everybody, put your mask on first. Find you somebody that's going to help you to walk this journey. Find you somebody that when you're having that day where you don't feel like getting out of the bed, you don't feel like studying, you don't feel like wanting to be a part of what God has for you because you don't feel like you're worthy, have that phone number, that person you can call and you can say, this is how I feel right now. And they can talk you off that ledge. But most of all, know that you have peace in God. And if you rest in God's peace, even in the midst of turmoil, he will give you direction.
So good. Thank you so much, Pastor Pender. This has been a great conversation today. Your church is God's House Christian Church, and I think I'm gonna have to come visit you one Sunday.
Come on, girl. Come on.
I also want to tell anyone who's listening that if today the stuff we've talked about, immediately you need to get help. We have a strategic partner called the Full Strength Network, and you can go to our website. It's Full Strength. I think it's fullstrength.org. But you can go to our website and find their link. They will help you. They help provide counseling for pastors and their families in every state across America. They're wonderful strategic partner of ours. And so I wanted to make sure if you're listening and you're like, I want to do something, but just like with, even your friend didn't tell you about this organization for a while, and he thought he wasn't being mean. Sometimes we also caught up in life. We don't think about helping other people out. So we want you to know, if you're listening right now and you're like, I need to do something, and as Tim said, you can always reach out to 95 Network, but if you need to do something now, go to Full Strength Network. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Our listeners will have heard me talk about the Pender Steakhouse enough to know that they know what I think about it. And we're taking you and your wife there this week. So we're excited about that.
Yes, sir.
We'll do a follow-up podcast about the Pender.
Oh, hey.
Oh, Lord.
We'll just make sure that there's a 2-hour allocation for that podcast.
Thank you again so much for your time, man. It's been
Thank y'all
awesome.
so much for inviting me. I had a wonderful time. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the 95 Podcast. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next week. In the meantime, visit our website at 95network.org. The website is loaded with great resources created for small and mid-sized church leaders. Until next time, have a great week.